Actually, through this very serious approach to humor, you can also figure out where you are, who you are, with whom you are, and to be ready that one or another member of this group or another group could try to influence you.
Woo, welcome. You have now entered Mad Warfare, mutually assured distraction, where we explore the weird, terrifying, and sometimes hilarious ways war is fought today, and how we can all protect our minds before we go too mad to find them.
Oh my!
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
How can you talk if you haven't got a brain?
Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern. Dangerous pattern.
Reminder, the opinions on this show are ours alone, and honestly, we might regret some of them later. They don't reflect our employers, past, present, or imaginary. This is a playground of wild ideas, so please, don't take anything here too seriously, unless it's genius. Then it was definitely intentional. What do you get when a president, a propaganda machine, and a stand-up comic walk into a war? You get the story of Russia, Ukraine, and how humor serves as a weapon, a signal, and a survival strategy. Today, we're exploring why understanding humor is essential to understanding power. Who holds it, who challenges it, and who it tries to erase. Our guest has spent over 15 years tracking how humor works in conflict and control across memes, sketch shows, and wartime stand-up. It's a real thing. She's worked for the United Nations, holds a PhD in political communication, advises on disinformation, narrative warfare, favorite, and cultural strategy. She is, quite literally, the person you call when a joke needs explaining, because sometimes a nation's future depends on what's deemed laughable. Solvita, Denisa, Liepniece. I'm Jocelyn Brady.
I'm Sean Guillory.
And welcome to Humor. Humor, funny humor as weapon. Solvita, thank you so much for joining from across the world today. You have such a cool background, and I think one of the coolest things I can imagine is studying humor and studying it in the context of politics and culture and warfare. But before we dig into that, I'm curious if there's a moment in your life that you realized humor was more than just funny, that it was doing something deeper.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to join your podcast. I'm following you, and I know your great job in the field of cognitive domain. And I would say that I'm not over-focused on humor. My interest towards humor is more like a collateral damage. Mainly, I'm interested in strategic communication. And when you are developing knowledge on strategic communication nowadays, it is absolutely natural to land into cognitive warfare. When I understood that humor is a tool in strategic communication and in political communication, I was working on my thesis. My PhD is about political communication in Belarus, and I was focused on Kremlin's activities towards Belarus. Mm-hmm. Kremlin's activities towards Lukashenko, then and now still the president of this country. Mm-hmm. And the main narrative in news was in news programs. Then television was the king, right? Mm-hmm. Then the main news programs were more or less neutral on the position of Lukashenko, on the position of relations between these two countries. But when it came to entertainment, it was quite easy to figure out that Kremlin's related programs are focused on Lukashenko, and that they are portraying Lukashenko not in a very good, I would say, light. I analyzed how Lukashenko used metaphors to unite his country sometimes against Russia, etc. And later on presented my research. It was in 2010 in Edinburgh. And I used a term, how I understood what was going on Russian TV, on Kremlin-related TV. And I described it as Hahaganda. So it was a clear propaganda, but it was a clear propaganda not in this, common news-related format, but it was a clear, televised, highly visually attractive Hahaganda. This is how I actually understood that humor plays crucial role. Of course, prior understanding how Kremlin used it against Lukashenko, I saw some elements in academic literature, some papers addressing humor as a tool, but mainly not in a strategic communication, mainly addressing humor in psychology, humor in literature. So, yeah.
Can we have a little bit of the context of when this was and a little bit of the power dynamics?
In 1998, Lukashenko became quite popular in Russia. And he tried to visit many regions. He was quite young, quite attractive. He was playing on this democratization and being really energetic, comparing to quite ill, quite old Yeltsin. And there is a belief that Lukashenko tried to become a head of this united state, because I think it is United State, Единое государство. And this was a moment when many humor-related shows in Russia, like, for example, Muppet Show Kukly, try to portray Lukashenko in a very negative manner. Just one example. Yeltsin is watching performance of Lukashenko. Lukashenko is addressing people, and this Muppet of Lukashenko starts address in Russian language, and later on the person is switching into German. And Yeltsin is discussing another politician driving with him in one car, discussing, this accent seemed Austrian. So it is a reference to Hitler.
Exactly.
So Nazi narrative is not something new for Kremlin then. And of course, it's still in many cases is portrayed in not so funny propaganda and propaganda which is using humor.
So we have for the kid in the room, we have Russia, and it's bordering Belarus, correct? And it's all just like it borders Ukraine. And so there's this power dynamic. We have Yeltsin in power at the time, who's like old and feeble, but Russia's like, don't make anyone believe that. So there's this young hot stuff over here trying to unite Belarus and Russia, Lukashenko, and they're like, we got to make him look like a total fool or a tool so that he doesn't get too popular and take power from the guy we need to prop up as powerful. Do I kind of have the gist?
A+ grade.
All right.
But it's not always was in one dynamic. There were definitely cycles, like we are going through the cycle now when they are more bonded. And there were also some attempts of Belarus to get into this European space. Okay. And this was actually in 2008 and in 2009 is the specific moment when I understood that it is really used in a one line with the Kremlin's narratives, and it plays a supportive role to these agenda setting techniques. And this is how I came up with Hahaganda as tool in strategic communication. And my main goal was always to protect. So my main goal was to show what techniques are being used to manipulate, to work on this persuasive side. That's why I tried to figure out how to equip the audiences, how to start the discussion about humor as about something serious. You see some jokes when you understand the jokes, when you understand that the joke is working with you as a target audience. And of course, I can use another language, develop language of cognitive warfare when we are describing the use of humor. When we are trying to figure out or to describe damage in cognitive warfare, more or less, Sean, please correct me, more or less we are landing in the zone of sense of belonging, in zone of trust, in issues related to social identities and group making.
Correct. One of the kind of definitions we try to work with, at least on this show, to kind of describe warfare, because obviously we're talking about things that go beyond just missiles and kind of like kinetic elements, is described as an antagonistic political struggle. And that political part is going in terms of like which groups of people or what cohesion those groups have. So yeah, absolutely. That plays into that. If you get people laughing, nothing could probably get people on your side more than to get them laughing. Again, you were just really ahead of your time in terms of the thought process on that.
To Sean's point, when we're talking about kinetic warfare, a very easy thing to measure, like you can count, sorry to say it, but you can count bodies, you can count, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
But how do you measure feelings of social belonging, and how do you measure a sense of identity? We just don't have that capacity. I don't know that we ever will. I fear the day that we can figure that out. But seeing you look at, it's the more difficult thing might be the social dynamic and something like humor, which can bond us in ways that nothing else can, I would think, right? The way humor
You're
connects.
Right. Humor connects, and sometimes it disconnects, and it also is a process. And when humor connects, it is using shared knowledge, and simultaneously it creates shared knowledge. And if the joke is addressed in a proper manner to a proper person, you can, through this sense of that you understand the joke, you can feel yourself a part of a group. And with the humor, with jokes, with humor, you can make these borderlines. You can, through the joke, the content, to put who is a representative of our group and who is excluded. And in the case of statecraft, humor could be used, and humor was used even in the Soviet era, to create this shared knowledge, to show the groups and to show that these groups are united in the Soviet Union, that with their dynamics, with the diversity, they are making this Soviet citizen. And later on, some of these Soviet propaganda's mechanisms, like factories, were rebuilt in modern Russia. And for many years, they were attracting and still are attracting people who had this Soviet experience, Soviet TV experience, those who were culturally bonded to some Soviet heritage like KVN. KVN was a movement.
And for the audience, it's spelled like KVN. Even to compare it to like a Saturday Night Live wouldn't probably give it how much cultural importance it has in terms of like former Soviet Union and Russia today.
So it is quite difficult to describe the experience of watching KVN. I have both experiences. Watching KVN as a kid and later on, and as a researcher as well. And also I performed in KVN. So it's a kind of show.
Nice. I know that. Go on. I did not know that. Yeah, go on.
A lot of kids in post-Soviet schools were engaged in this class versus another. In one grade, you have group A and group B, and these two groups are competing. What do? They are showing sketches, they are showing jokes, and the jury is voting. So who is better in this performance? And KVN was created by Soviet TV, and Soviet TV in authoritarian regime was a machine of propaganda to show some sense of freedom, to express some sense of freedom, and also to joke on some important, relevant issues that should be addressed, but it is not possible to address these issues in a news program. So some corruption, some bureaucracy, and through these jokes, you provide a sense that the power, those around, are understanding that some issues should be checked or developed. But of course, on Soviet TV, censorship was like the second name for a Soviet TV in the authoritarian regime. I believe it still is. in authoritarian countries. And in the show, in the Soviet time, had quite short lifespan, and later on it returned in the era of glasnost and perestroika. So in the late decade of the Soviet Union,
The
the
Gorbachev
idea
years.
was, in Gorbachev years, the idea was to give more space for freedom of speech and also to rebuild this authoritarian system. And KVN was also one of the programs that get back to the screens of Soviet people. And many prominent leaders, many prominent anchors, presenters, actors started their career in KVN, including Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. So he started also with KVN. Later on, he performed also in Moscow, and his team was quite successful. And Vladimir Zelensky, he created his own studio when they separated from the KVN movement. And just to give you some examples how the KVN movement were transformed under Putin, how Putin's regime used KVN, I also added a link to the visit of Putin to this performance. He visited performance in March 2018, exactly after addressing the federal parliament, Федеральное собрание. So his day started with addressing the federal parliament, Федеральное собрание. He talked about new nuclear weaponry. And then he went to this game. He met young people. He addressed these young people, and they were joking about politics as well. This was the recording of program. It definitely was a part of this pre-election campaign. And within the screening, the recorded version of the game visited by Putin showed him 38 or 39 times. How he is laughing, how he is having fun together with these young people, how he is reacting. So it was quite interesting example.
Look at what a fun guy.
Yeah, exactly. Wild and crazy good. Looks like a real human being. I mean, that's kind of what folks have been saying, fast forward kind of like more nowadays. Not this podcast, but, just in terms of like appearing on podcasts, they're like, oh, this seems like a real person. I could just sit there with a beer. And I guess in terms of this, look at how many times he laughed.
There's nothing quite like this too, right? Because we have like disparate, there's like American Idol, but that's only really usually singing.
It's like a mix between like, again, like Gen X and millennial stand, like almost like Star Search meets, again, like Saturday Night Live.
It's quite a phenomenon.
It's all-encompassing kind of like culture sort of thing that, again, I just can't describe, at least like in terms of American context, the same way I can't think of a show or something like that as the equivalent.
And you can also show to your viewers, to your audience, an episode when Putin is sitting in jury. It's back to 2000, and Zelensky is performing. So, he was playing in the highest league of KVN in Moscow. I mean, Zelensky, but Putin already was in power. But what is important, that KVN also was, and still I think is played or performed in Russian army. And so it means that the military are engaged in the creation of humor. And this is, I would say, very important when it comes to the use of humor in psychological operations, in the use of humor in campaigns as a supportive or not just supportive, but as a stage settling exercise. So it definitely, when it comes to Kremlin's related media channels and media infrastructure, and when it comes to humor, you can see some elements of censorship When people are complaining later on that one joke was excluded or another joke was excluded, or when it is a self-censorship, when you clearly understand that you cannot go with a joke about one topic or another. One specifically relevant element with humor is silence. On what topics you are not making jokes.
Gotcha. A little bit.
So when you are not using humor or some topics, you are not welcome to make jokes. And this also is a signal. When you are analyzing some shows, you can see that one element was present and then this element is missing. It was with Ukraine. Ukrainian teams were performing quite good and they were among the best 2010, prior the full the annexation of Crimea. Prior to 2014, Ukrainians and Russians, and Belarusians, they were standing on one stage and they were performing. After 2014, there were a clear mark that Ukrainian shows, they came back to Ukraine and they created their own shows. And they are still superior. They are so good in creating of these shows, as Zelensky and his production was great with Kvartal 95, Kvartal 95. And yeah.
I mean, imagine Putin's so mad because it's so fascinating to think about. So relating it back to our American context, it's like you don't have the same people grow up. If they want to be comedians, it's a very solitary game, and that's like the thing you go in knowing that you're alone. There's no real competition except for the ones Sean was mentioning. It's not part of our cultural ethos in that way, whereas I'm imagining Ukraine is this very central thing that shows how strong they are and smart and united versus this, you know, back to Americans, like this more individualistic approach to it that shines through in how they approach comedy too. And here we don't, it's like the comedians, at least still today, are usually often here, not all the time, the really good ones, in my opinion, are speaking truth to power, and they're punching up and they're revealing something about power imbalances which we're not seeing censored out by any kind of state media. That would be the public deciding. The public here would say, we don't like those jokes, we don't accept you, versus an authoritarian saying, if you make that joke, you're going to prison. So it seems like that's a very, I don't know, you tell me if I'm reading that kind of situation right, with the cultural difference and how that approach to humor speaks so clearly to what matters to them.
Absolutely. Those who decided to leave Russia and to continue their jokes, continue to create songs, to create shows, they definitely will not be welcomed in the country. You mentioned Ukrainians and how they are using humor, and they are really good at using humor to create shared knowledge and also to provide unification. One example of a comedian who performed in a bomb shelter addressing the audience.
Yeah.
People are trying to avoid attacks and they are gathering together in shelters. And what do they do in shelters? They also are telling jokes.
I try. I make this video, try to collect some money from the world to help my country in this war. And this is such a strange feeling. Last 10 years of my life, I was raising money to have a flat in Kiev. Now I'm raising money to win a war. That's a little bit more difficult.
Of course, it is not new. We know great examples of humor during Holocaust, how it helped to survive. And one of the important elements of humor is stress relief and also to moderate your fear. And when you are laughing on something, you also are reducing the level of stress. And great examples are still on TV, not also in shelters, but also on Ukrainian TV, how they are addressing current issues like women living outside Ukraine and men living in Ukraine. How do they communicate? And the sketches are being made to address. And another element, maybe you will decide to include it, how they are also portraying their own superiority with the use of humor. I edit one video showing not Zelensky, but a person who is showing like he's Zelensky and he is going through detection frame in airport and something
Gotcha.
is ringing and he is giving his keys. Then something is ringing anyhow, so some sound is coming. So, okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's phone. So he's giving away his phone. And then anyhow, something is ringing. And he is asking, or the person is asking, what is it? And the answer is balls. So it also is, to show the superiority of their
Got
leader.
The balls of steel.
Got it. Oh my god. Didn't expect that. Couple different things. In terms of anybody that's interested in terms of the better ones I've seen, which I don't know if it was the book that you're alluding to, of Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. That's when he was in the Holocaust and he was talking about how humor kind of helped him get through that. So I kind of wanted to shout out that one book. That actually wanted to, I want to say this out loud. I don't think I've ever said it out loud. The idea of borders is essentially, it's a cognitive construct. I say that because humor really does seem to almost be one of those ultimate tests of where the borders are at. Are you in terms of, did you actually get the joke or did you not? Do you not think it's funny? Were you offended? And even just like those changes over time where at one time they could stand united in terms of everybody kind of laughing together and being on the same stage, but very much having a border, even in terms of almost an embargo of like who's listening to what. And I just never thought about, I think, humor until, again, like you've been mentioning again a couple of times in terms of things. So I just wanted to kind of say that out loud because, again, obviously in terms of like warfare and how humor plays into it.
Even the phrase,
it's almost like a sonar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Literally crossing the line if we're talking about borders and where that line is a cognitive construct.
With humor, you can also break geographical borders. And when you are united,
break and make.
Absolutely. When you are in this international community, you can find something that unites you. And you can build your humor based on these, not general, but topic-specific elements. When I worked at the United Nations, I had a great team. And the team was so excellent in combining different elements of humor coming from so many countries.
That sounds
from the
beautiful.
authoritarian countries, from democracy-based countries. So it is also something that could be used to create these new or to shape new identities of belonging. Sense of belonging goes definitely beyond ethnicity. It goes beyond geography. So you can make your tribes or to revise your tribes not based on the genesis, not based on primordial approach, right?
Yes,
when it is
yes,
blood,
your biology.
which defines you. So you can definitely redefine yourself with humor. And when it comes to warfare, it could be used both to attack and to defend. So it works, it could be used in both directions. And what is most important for me, it could be also used to make your societies more resilient. But what is a key for resiliency?
Resilience.
And and you, Sean, addressed it. So we are so fact-focused, I would say over-focused. We are so news-centric. Our approach is media-centric, news-centric approach. But when it comes to protection, when it comes to what really works with this cognitive damage, it seems that it is media, some content, it's only a vehicle. but the core is in your head. It's a cognition. It's how you are perceiving reality, right? When it addresses you, how do you reflect? And that's why I think that to inform, and actually your podcast is doing this great job on informing on what could be used against, right? What could be used to influence, what could be used to manipulate. And this is not only fact-based, this is not only news-based, not media-centric, but it's a human-centric approach when you understand who you are and who is your tribe, when you try to define your tribe. And also humor could help you to figure out, so with whom you are laughing, why you're laughing with them, why their jokes are attractive and these jokes are not attractive. So do you try to fit yourself in this mainstream of jokes or not? Actually, through this very serious approach to humor, you can also figure out where you are, who you are, with whom you are, and to be ready that one or another member of this group or another group could try to influence you.
Do we want to be people who punch down, or do we want to be people who speak truth to power? And I think that we're in America at a time where we have to ask ourselves this question very apparently.
この番組はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りいたしました。
How wide is this web we've woven? 'Cause I don't know which way to go. How wide is this web we've woven? 'Cause I don't know which way to go. Automation, artificial intel, data science carousel. New alliance looking for the guidance, pave away a path to break the silence. A fight for attention, we're here to ascend it. A minute at a time for a mind that can sense it. When life feels suspended, mapping inside. Check the web to start detection. Mapping inside. The cloud can make it rain, we got your back. Put you on the road with people you can trust and build for growth and lift the mood up. Humane-centered technology. How wide is this web we've woven? 'Cause I don't know which way to go.
You want to talk?
How wide is this web we've woven? 'Cause I don't know which way to go.
The example I wanted to share with you is related to jokes Putin is making. So there were different. He's so many years in power. There are collections of his jokes made publicly, and you can see some jokes related to crimes, some jokes related to abuse, some jokes related to anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. So it's more humor used to attack someone, right? And another example I want to share with you is related to Zelensky and the joke he created or his team created in WhatsApp like chat and shown on one of the high-level events. And this video shows a WhatsApp group of state leaders and how do they texting each other. And the audience is laughing, reacting on how do they communicate. And this is back to 2019 when Zelensky just came to power and when he won elections with quite significant result for a democratic country. More than 70% voted for him. But prior this vote, he became a protagonist of a series called Servant of People, showing a common man, a teacher, a school teacher, who managed to become a president of a country to battle also corruption and the stuff. So it was a quite popular movie, right, in Ukraine. But Zelensky definitely was and still is someone very... Then he was famous not only in Ukraine, but also for those who watched KVN and other TV shows. and now he is known for many in the world.
Yeah,
Not
so
because of his jokes, but because of his leadership.
the brilliant thing about Servant of the People was it was a TV show, and then correct me if I'm wrong, the party that Zelensky's a part of isn't it essence like Servant of the People? That's the name of his political party. So the thing that was in this story, he turned it into a real life party that was wildly successful and led to him to win. That's a masterclass of being able to use and utilize narrative to get into that results. And we're still seeing that in terms of his response and his leadership. So he's kind of war effort. Like he's one of the best I've ever seen in terms of being able to take that narrative and make it reality, and the reality and turn it into narrative. He knows how important that story and how things are coming off for the ultimate win and the ultimate victory for his people. And so I just wanted to get him he's just simply one of the best if we're looking at the mechanics of narrative strategy and how it can, the fate of your country being at that.
This is so fascinating learning about Kavayan and this awareness that people have there of the importance of performance and how that can seep into who people believe and trust and get behind. And I think we might be behind in America. We have had reality TV, but I think we're only now kind of reconciling when people are painting a picture on television, they can then become that thing in real life.
In my schools, we had no debating, but we had Kavayan. Yeah, and I think Kavayan helped with public speaking, so it helped to meet your audience. So there definitely were also some very useful elements, creativity.
Mm-hmm.
There's this very popular, it was in the early 2000s show in the U.S. called The West Wing. And I know Jocelyn knows where I'm going. And it's so popular with the Democratic kind of like neoliberals in terms of how people should conduct themselves, and just the most important thing is about being right and not necessarily winning. You won you were right in this argument, even if you didn't win. If folks in politics, they should have been watching more pro wrestling instead of the West Wing. That kind of skill set that you would get, probably the closest thing would be improv in terms of the U.S. context, but something like a training for like Kavayan and improv, I actually think that probably would help people out in terms of political strategic communication more than just pure debate, even though it is important to know if your arguments are following correctly.
I think we should teach all our kids. They should have roast battles in school and absolutely.
But they make fun of each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think having that levity, because in debate structure is just to be so serious. And Solvita, to your point earlier of fact, we're too fact focused. And a joke I often make in talk, I do narrative training and keynotes, and it's like, you ever get in a fact off with a relative because it doesn't go well.
Fact off.
It's just, for debates, it's just fact. Who's better at fact, at least in some debates. And if instead you learned, how do I get people to laugh? Even how would I get people to laugh at something that's true? That's a just mic drop skill that I think our kids should learn.
I think the kids should learn who they are and how society is influencing them, the group, parents, teachers, how they try to adjust themselves to those who are in lead. And this humor definitely is an important element to be included in curriculum. Also exercising how to create a joke, but much more important is to understand on the side of our physical reaction, our emotional reaction, our cognitive reaction to these as very specific, very, very natural. I would tell that when someone wants you to be engaged in laughing together, it's good to laugh together, but it is important to ask why and how. What was a way to attract you with this joke? What was the way to attract you to this community? And later on, you have to analyze, do you want to belong to this community? Why? One or another actor tries you to get into this community. Who else is in this community? So I would be very interested myself to rebuilding this idea of media literacy with getting from the point of media to the point of a person, a human literacy. This is what we truly need. There will be new ways how to address us. There will be new manipulators. There will be new abilities to engage with our cognition, right? Already are. And the new challenges are coming. What stays more or less the same is how our cognition works. We are not participating in such an active evolution as technologists do, right? However, we definitely also are involving with all the navigation tools and how it looks from your perspective.
It's difficult to measure, right? So the most important thing, I thought you put it so beautifully, is if our kids learn, so if we're just looking at humor, if they learn, why are we laughing at this? And what was the agenda of the person trying to make us laugh? Just even to explore those questions, how powerful that is. Yes. And that's not something that we can measure there's no right or wrong answer necessarily. It's them thinking through and imagining and exploring ideas, and you can't just put that on a test and pass fail. So how do we get more of that, encourage more of that sort of thinking in education? It's a big question.
And a noble goal to go down. Yeah.
If we gave, actually I have this question here, which I think is very funny.
Go on.
If you had to pack a joke survival kit or a humor survival kit for somebody who's living in disinformation, misinformation, or major conflict zones, what would you put in that joke or humor survival kit?
Jokes made with loved ones. I don't know if you have albums with photos, right? Try to create the library, the collection of these moments when you were united with those who is your core tribe. And this could be very helpful. So this could be the foundation of sometimes your background, who you are. So this is what I try to keep, not only to keep these photo moments, but also some jokes made by those with whom I'm very connected. So this is my personal toolkit. I will not be able to suggest to any other person what could be helpful to have in this toolkit. My way, also another way, keep this. Okay, let's use toolkit to use metaphors, because metaphors are very close relatives of humor. I truly believe in it from the perspective of cognitive linguistics. So this is what I saw trying to figure out how domains are connected, working on metaphors, working on metaphor power index. And it is connected to how some elements of humor are created. So this also is something that is helpful to me. I'm watching TV shows in Ukrainian. When I analyze it, just to have some, fresh notes, I do not work with humor every day. I work with humor, a week in a decade, right? When I am finalizing some report or so. This is not the main topic. This is a very marginal topic on my agenda. But even recently I watched this show in Ukraine, previously led by Zelensky, and I was laughing and I was getting back myself. Okay. So, and now be focused on the narratives, be focused on the protagonists. Yeah, be focused on the mechanics of the show, but yeah, they are truly good. And yeah, this also is how you can decode my emotions. So I am supporting Ukraine, and I'm supporting Ukraine also while watching. So I feel this sense of belonging with those who are suffering due to this unfair war.
we have the sort of practical tools for folks is that the equivalent of your photo album of jokes with people you love. And you were talking also about metaphor as a practice, which is a close relative of comedy humor because it helps you stretch your thinking. And you also mentioned cognitive resiliency. Are there any other pieces of wisdom or parting advice that you would hope people take away or could practice?
Regarding cognitive resilience, I think it's a key and it should be in the center of the discussion. So how do we engage in different acts of communication, including internal communication, right? So this actually shown is how to name the subject. Maybe could be able to introduce in schools. So I think this subject should contain a word communication, because this communication is a key. Maybe I'm defending my field because communication is my field. This is my backbone. This is a backbone for my applied research. This is a backbone for my academic research. So everything I see around, everything I am observing is related to communication. So
That's fair. Yeah.
The next step in communication is community. So communicating. So the unity you are communicating with. So for me, these two steps are,
Communication and community.
I'm playing with words.
Yes,
In different languages, we have different words.
I love it. Hey, play with your words, people. Play with your words. Engage in your community. And are there any projects, books, things that you'd like to share or point people to?
I am changing the sphere of my activities. So I plan to move to another sector from the non-governmental sector. And what I try to do, I try to translate the knowledge I am working with. So I try to translate it into languages of audiences. And I do not mean languages like English or Latvian, but I try to figure out a proper way how to address audience. I authored 2 books for kids, and one book is Wolf the Manipulator. And with this book, Wolf tries to get rabbits, right? So he tries to catch them, but not in this, vulgar way of just a catching. So he tries to manipulate and to cast them as enemies. And my second book, called Conspiracy Theory, is about animals and how animals are sharing rumors and why it is important not to rely on one source of information. So why it is important to understand what really happened and not to catch some, scary news and to share this scary news with others. So this is how I try to attract audiences and how I try to transmit some interesting observations. Because when you work in the field, not just 1 year, not 5 years, but 20 plus years, some elements are coming sometimes in a very unexpected way. One topic I definitely want to address, I do not have a lot of time to work on it in a classic academic way, but hypothetical future, the use of hypothetical future. We discussed it with Sean, I believe, a couple of years ago. So this is how future is being used also to manipulate, because for us, for humans, it is very important to make predictions. And predictions are when we are making decisions. And with the use of mystics, with the use of astrology, with the use of different manipulated ways, we can see that authoritarian regimes are addressing their audience, literally giving them the only future they should expect. And this is something also attractive to me as a topic. So I try to make my collection of examples, as I do for now almost 2 decades, the collection of humor-related cases.
But again, it's like a Hahaganda and these books that you have out there, you seem to be habitually ahead of the field. And like I said, I appreciate, again, you sharing your insights from the future with us on this show today.
Speaking of the future, if you all want to stay ahead, if you can tell our audience how to find you and connect with you if you'd like to be found.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is a good way to get in touch. Thank you.
Again, if you want to reach out to us in terms of anything pique your curiosity, reach out to us at the Mad Warfare Podcast at gmail.com, or we're on LinkedIn. Again, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button and everything. But yeah,
find, follow, smash likes, all that.
Everything.
Share.
Do it all.
Just laugh.
Hulk hands. Yeah.
We interrupt this episode to say, if you've ever felt really alone and didn't know where to turn, may we suggest, put the picture over here, Elle Yonker. Elle is what national security should look like. She protects people online as a cybersecurity expert, but she also shows up for people in crisis through the Hive Social Garden, which helps folks find real support when things get hard. Her website, thehivesocial.garden. She's our first recurring sponsor. Thank you eternally for that, which feels exactly right. Elle, this is for you and for everybody listening. Please go to her website, thehivesocial.garden. Feel free to bother her on LinkedIn. She'll probably appreciate it. Now, back to the show.
I've come to talk with you again. Come and be inside my head. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you cancel me. Cancel me, cancel me. I got things to say, you cancel me. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel that mistake. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel that mistake. It's only a matter of time till we all win. Cancel that mistake. Cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me. Cancel me. Cancel me. I got things to say. You can cancel me.